So we're talking about getting that first big job, right? Where do you want to go? Where do you think you're going to make the most? All we're talking about is compensation now. We had wonderful words about all the soft topics and everything. Now we're going to get a little more granular. What's in it for you, right? Those are the average annual salaries for 2017, and these are the regions. And obviously, the cost of living varies from region to region. How did Wyoming work out there? They're doing okay. Southwest. All right, let's have our panelists come on up here if we would. And, by the way, how much do ophthalmologists earn overall? And the range is somewhere between 489 and 202. And ophthalmologists, bingo, right near the 50-yard line, 345. These are out of practice, national average, Medscape series, about 1,200 participants in ophthalmology. So that's kind of like the target of what you are thinking about, above or below, depending on what kind of life you want to live. Are my panelists here? Let's have them come on up here and have a seat on the stage. This panel is How Do I Find a Job? And talking about getting that first opportunity out of your training. And I still have some of these Starbucks cards as well, so if you have a question anytime, just raise your hand and just scream out. I think this one's worth like $250. This is a pretty good one. Or it could be $250, I don't know. What would that get you at Starbucks? A dirty look, that's what it gets you. Here we go. Dr. Rahul Reddy is here talking about private practice. Dr. Peter McIntosh, academics. Our solo private practitioner is Dr. Sean Paul. And Robin Vora is talking about, where's Robin? There you are, about Kaiser, all right, managed plan system. So we'll start off then with these august gentlemen, very quickly, out of your training, how did you find your job? Go.
So I've been in practice for roughly about 7 years. There is numerous resources that I use when I come out of practice. I was primarily an academic background, a little bit of a different course with a couple extra degrees, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say the best resources for me were, number one, this is probably in order, were my mentors. I think your respective training programs can guide you quite a bit with regard to where you're going to get a job, what kind of people you're going to be working with, and your faculty have a fair amount of connections throughout the nation. The other resources that are at your disposal are obviously the academy. There's a lot of information on the websites. There's a lot of job panels. Recruiters are a third option. I actually used all of these. I was fortunate enough to be at an institution where my chairman got a lot of calls asking if one of his fellows would like to join certain areas, and that helped quite a bit. I actually found my job through a recruiter, which I did not anticipate at the time, and it's about exposure. It's about getting your name out. It's about seeing what is out there, and without exposure, the respective group you may join may not know you're out there, and you may not know they're out there. It's widely stated and trite, but nonetheless true, that sometimes the best jobs are the ones not advertised. So I would encourage you also to speak to as many of your colleagues as you can. Word of mouth, a personal recommendation will go quite a long way, just like it did in residency, just like it did in medical school, et cetera, et cetera. So I think all those resources are at your disposal, and I would highly encourage you to use as many as you can. You'll be somewhat surprised as an avenue that you didn't think you would use actually resulted in your job.
And you, Robin, how'd you find your way to Kaiser?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have all heard of 7 degrees of separation, where every person on the planet's 7 degrees, 7 people away from knowing you. I think in ophthalmology it's probably 2 degrees. And honestly, it's your mentors, it's your faculty members, or where you're training. They're the best resource to tell you. You kind of tell them where geographically, and they will help you. And that would be my strongest advice.
So I kind of took the road less traveled and set up my own practice, and I felt like I did all the things these gentlemen have also mentioned, were spoke to mentors, explore the Academy website, interviewed, and I really felt, and I really think it's important to figure out what kind of practice you want to practice. And I felt like setting up your own practice, delivering the care you want to care, having a great patient interaction one-on-one with yourself, and delivering really personalized care, so it's not commercialized or impersonal is what I wanted. So I went the solo route.
And what were the drivers, Dr. Paul, that said, because of this, I want to go solo?
Talking to peers who had been out, and I finished a 2-year ASOPers fellowship, and I talked to peers who were ahead of me 2 to 3 years, and they went through a critical transition where they didn't have specific things outlined to them that were clearly delineated as they were approaching their practice, and so I wanted to create my own destiny.
Did you take over an existing practice? You start from scratch.
Hung up a shingle.
Ladies and gentlemen, the dinosaur. How many people tried to talk you out of doing that?
0.
0. Tell me about what you see as your long-term prognosis, given all that we heard in the last 10 minutes.
I'm going to do just fine, I think. I mean, I think as long as you...
Has anybody come up to you and offered you $1.45 billion for your practice?
Not billion yet, no.
Okay. But there are predators out there.
Absolutely. I mean, when they see someone who, from a business standpoint, and this is one of the things we lack, I think, in the training process, is the business understanding of what you're getting into when you're coming out, because we're so focused on excellent results, good patient care, good surgical techniques, and I think it's really critical to have a resource to still practice the way you want to practice.
Dr. McIntosh, what got you into academics?
I think a lot of us go into ophthalmology or into residency thinking, and I'm part of the admissions committee at our university, thinking we're going to go into academics. And I think part of that is that's sort of all we know. That's what we know. That's what we feel comfortable with. But for me, it was a number of things. I looked at academic. I looked at private practice. And I found that the best fit for me was had to do partly with geography, where I wanted to work, and what jobs were available there. So I think that's an important consideration. For some people, geography is critically important, and if that's the most important factor, that will help shape the job you're going to end up finding. But I agree with what everybody has said about exposure. The more people you know, the easier it's going to be for you to find that best fit job. And I think one way to do that, particularly if you're going into academics, I think you're more likely to pursue a fellowship training. And I think an important thing to do is diversify your training. And by that I mean train elsewhere. So medical school at one place, residency somewhere else, fellowship again somewhere else. I did 2 fellowships, one in neuro-ophthalmology, and then I completed an ASOPers as well. And that just exposes you to so many more people and widens your network, because that's what's going to help you find a job. You've heard it 4 times now. And I think one good way to do that is to know as many people as possible.
A medical school interview, a residency interview, a fellowship interview are all technically job interviews, but they're totally canned. Everything is already in the package. There's not really much to negotiate. In fact, there's nothing to negotiate. You're going to start on July 1st. That's the deal. So when you're going in for your career interviews, in many ways, it's a different kind of creature. So you may be using different strategies and different techniques to convince the person who's interviewing you to meet you halfway on things that you do have control over. So let me ask our panelists each, very briefly, we're running out of time, interview pearls for practice opportunities, not for training opportunities, and the role of discussing compensation, how hard to push, all right, and best practices to get a successful interview and hopefully land the job you want.
Yeah, when you go into these interviews, I think you have to do your homework, just like you did on your other interviews, except it's a different facet of life. You're going in for your work. This is probably the second most important decision you'll ever make, is the people you work with. With regard to interview pearls, what I would say is know as much about the geography and the practice that you're interviewing at, because they may have an unmet need, which you could fill, which you could even speak about during your interview. Bringing up compensation is a very fair question. I wouldn't concentrate on that, and I think it's a fine line that you draw, but that is a fair question. But the details of the compensation should probably be reserved for that second phase, once you decide this is the right fit for you. That's typically the way that when we interview somebody, it sheds some light on what their motives are, and I think money is important to every single person in this room, but it should not be completely the driving factor, but it's going to be a very important factor. So I would say it's fair to bring it up. I wouldn't focus on it too much, and the details of the financial structure can be perhaps negotiated and kind of elaborated on once you determine if that's a place that you're certainly interested in.
What's the flexibility at Kaiser?
Yeah, so, when we're interviewing, nobody gets an interview or comes in unless we know they're stellar. they were a star where they were at. And then it's really about fit. And it's your fit with the practice and our fit with you, because our goal is to keep you as family for 15, 20 years. And so it becomes really a personality thing. And our interview day has really changed. It used to be 30 minutes with each partner, closed door. Now it's a tour and then happy hour, and we get to really see how people are and if they fit the group. And I think when you're looking for jobs, really, before compensation and many other things, do you like the people you're going to work with? Because you're going to spend a lot of time with them. And are they ethical? And do they have the same values you do? Do they take care of patients the way that you'd want to take care of them? Because that will go a long way in your career.
So obviously, being in solo practice a little bit different from that standpoint. But I think if you're deciding to go that route and do solo practice, and you just don't feel like you found the fit, find a mentor, find a resource who's done it before. I know my email is listed on the back of the program there, but I'm happy to discuss with you the details of that process.
Have you ever had an associate?
We have recently had someone come on as a part-time person, just as the practice is built up.
Okay, so in fact, you have had experience then.
Yes, correct, yeah.
Okay, so for the environment, maybe not solo private practice, but small group private practice.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what both these guys said too. It's just making sure your missions are aligned. You have a clear group focus of what you want the practice to represent for the community. And also, like, the biggest thing I think is just making sure you're happy where you're going. You don't have to go to a place. There's so many jobs. There's so much fear-mongering out there about saturated markets. It's all false. I mean, the patient population is aging. If you do really good work, you will be busy. And I hate the terms about, you're not going to have individualized patient care anymore. I just frankly don't think that's true. I think you always will. If you're a good doctor, you'll have people that can follow you.
Interview pearls at the university.
In academics, there's many different payment structures, so I think early on, it's not unreasonable to ask general questions about the compensation. For example, some jobs are purely salary-based, some may have a bonus and or an incentive component built in, and others, if you are on some kind of a research path where you have a K award, you may be only 20% clinical, and that K will pay for the rest of your salary. So I think early on it's fair to ask questions about the general payment structure so that you're sort of all on the same page about the direction you're going in. But I agree with everybody else, the specific details about actual numbers, that's going to come later.
Okay, wonderful. Anybody got a question? One last question, yes.
Did any of you guys look for a job at the same time as a significant other? And if so, do you have any advice for not just being the only person looking for a job?
So my wife's a general ophthalmologist in retina. So this was a very, very interesting path that we had. So that was difficult. And I think there's two ways to approach it. You either know where you want to be, or you're just going to open it up to geography and look for the best job. I think those are really two ways to approach it, but I think you should emphasize that in all of your interviews. Even before you go on the interview, let them know that you have a spouse. You'll be amazed at how many opportunities that they may know of in the area, because they've been in the area for an extended period of time many times, and they will offer you guidance with regard to opportunities. I think the respective practices you may join will help you quite a bit, because if they really want you, they will find a spot for your spouse, and they will at least help you to have him or her obtain a position, or on the track to obtain a position.
Wonderful information. Wish we had more time. Maybe you can collar them at the doorway. But thank you again all for joining us. Let's give them a nice warm round of applause.